Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Magnifying HR Voices. How are you doing today? I missed you last week, and I'm so sorry. My guest for last week pulled out at the last minute, and I decided, you know what? Instead of me trying to force a show that I hadn't prepared for, let me just show one of my podcasts from HR Sound Off because I do videos for that as well. And I said, let me share one of those with you. And it seems like you guys really enjoyed that as well. But I did miss you. So I'm so glad to be back here today. And we're going to have a conversation. You know how we do. Something that we need to talk about that we're not talking about enough. And so today we are going to have that conversation about the HR CEO relationship because I've been getting a lot of questions about it from people on social media and HR, as well as from my clients who may be struggling with their relationship with their CEO and how can we make that better? You know, what's really important. And so we're going to have that conversation today, but I'm not going to have that all by myself. Of course not. Here to have this conversation with me today is someone who I admire so much, known throughout the Caribbean as the first female CEO of a technology-driven company, our telecommunications network, Digicel. Janice Sutherland is absolutely impressive. She's an author, she is a podcaster, similar to me, and I've learned so much from Janice, and I thought today would be a great day to have a conversation with her as a former CEO and the CEO of her current company, just to talk to her and see what her thoughts are on the relationship with HR and the CEO, what her experience has been. And of course, I know you guys never let me down. We are going to talk about any question that you may have. Feel free to field it in. I know how you guys do it. And the conversation is going to flow just the way it normally does. You chime in, we answer back. This is not just our conversation. This is your conversation because I'm magnifying all HR voices and you are all HR awesome. So tell me where you're connecting from today. I see Rochelle in the house. So I know Jamaica is here. I see Jolene in the house. So I know Barbados / the UK is in the house. So good to see you guys. I see Pamela, so I know the USA is here. I'm going to bring up Janice, and we're going to get started. Janice.
Julie, hey, in the house.
How are you doing? So Antigua is now in the house.
Antigua's definitely here, representing live and direct.
Yes. I see everyone here loving you, Janice. So they're really glad to have you here.
You know, I'll take it. I am amazing. You know, I have. You know, I'm not going to hold back and take my praise. This is not a normal woman thing. We take it.
Absolutely. I see Chicago is in the house. Hey, Pamela, how you doing? So everyone is here. I'm going to do what I do best, which is allow you to tell your leadership origin story. Let's tell our audience who you are, where you're from, and what's your leadership story. Let's do this. So I'm going to jump off while you do that.
Woo! Leadership story. I need to put it in a potted way. I would say I was born to leadership. I am the eldest of 6, so I've always had a leadership responsibility. But I didn't come to my corporate or my corporate leadership role till I was in my late 20s. That's after being divorced with 2 children and a single parent. That's when I really started getting into my leadership realm. I went to school, took a couple of degrees and found that I have a natural affinity with leadership, and I really took it from there. And I started in the call center industry way back before it was call center or contact center, coined that term. So I worked my way up from a team leader, supervisor, call center manager, head of sales, head of UK sales for a bank. Before I decided on my then fiance, because we weren't married yet, we had met and he said he wasn't staying in the UK. He wants to travel to the Caribbean. He's moving to the Caribbean. He's Jamaican descent. And he said, going to move to Jamaica. And I said, whoa. I love Jamaica, but I always feel like Farin. You know, for those of you who know the vernacular, I feel like a foreigner when I'm in Jamaica. So, but come and see Antigua. Come and see what Antigua's like. And we built a property. We got married out here when the youngest had gone to school, university. We left home, I like to say. We came to Antigua. The goal then was, as I said, I'd held senior roles in the UK, and I want to take it down a notch. Not retire, not quite retire, but just bring it down a little notch. Not work at the level I've been working in the UK. I got a role with Digicel as their commercial manager, but they obviously saw that I brought a lot to the table given my past experience. And basically, I ended up working my way through a number of roles within Digicel. I became a regional commercial director. I was an interim CEO for St. Kitts. And then I became CEO, the first female CEO in the telecoms history of Antigua, Barbuda, and Montserrat. And I stayed with them for another few years, a good few years after that, but I've never been one to kind of rest on my laurels or stay long with very many organizations. I always like to be pushing myself, driving myself and learning more. So I then decided the time was right for me to set my own organization, establish my own organization, This Woman Can, where I work in the field of leadership. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let me share what I know. So I work with organizations developing their mainly female leadership is what I like to work in, but I do touch the male, not touch as in the physical sense, but I do work with the male counterparts and work on their leadership. And more recently, what I found is that more and more women looking to transition their careers, transfer their skills, reinvent themselves, look to move to new roles, move up the ladder. So I think that's a very hopefully a potted history of my origin story, my leadership expertise.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Janice. I was so caught up in the story, I almost forgot to come back. So let's get this conversation started very early. The reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you today is because I feel like it's really important for us to understand how critical, important it is for us as HR professionals to have a really good relationship with our CEOs.
Yeah.
If we want to be seen as the driving force, if we want to earn that seat at the table and add our value, it starts with building trust and building that relationship with our CEOs.
Yes.
So for you as a CEO, because you're still a CEO, you're the CEO of your current company, but being in big corporations throughout your career, what are some of the things that you valued about working with HR and having a good HR person in your team?
I have worked, as I said, I had a tendency to change careers or change organizations maybe every 3 to 4 years. I'm not going to tell you my age, but let's just say I've worked in a number of organizations across those years. So I've had the opportunity to work with a number of HR practitioners. And I hadn't really thought about this question until you asked me, what do I look for? What do I value? And I just came off the things that came to the top of my head that work for me. I look for honesty. I look for honesty. I look for integrity when I'm dealing with my HR personnel. I look for foresight. And I'll tell you for why later on, but I look for foresight. I look for candor. And by that, I mean, how, I gotta be sensible here, but call me out of my ish, for want of a better phrase.
Yes.
And then I also like, and this is my mindset, but I also want people to have what I call a MacGyver mindset. And if you've listened to me long enough, you'll hear me talk about having a MacGyver mindset a lot of times.
Yes.
That is, you see an issue, you see a problem, you devise a solution. It doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to get the job done.
Yes.
So, and I'm old school MacGyver, not this newfangled. I'm old school MacGyver.
Good,
so, take the tin cans and make something fabulous out of it. So that's really what I look for. And the foresight. And I think this is something that a HR possibly doesn't look at, is to actually be able, as a CEO, I often have to think 6-12 months ahead in the organization.
Right.
That's the vision. I know where I have to be taking this business. So I want my HR support to be able to think the same way. to see what the obstacles could be coming down the road,
Right.
to almost not to second guess, but have an awareness that an issue, these
It's
type of
coming.
issues can arise, and
Yeah.
how can we mitigate those going forward. So that's
Mhm.
probably what I look for, mostly when I'm looking at what I value in a HR person or HR team.
And I see that Jolene is in complete agreement with you. With the MacGyver mindset, she's here saying that is her every day. I
Yes.
I can see Jolene. That is her every day. And then yeah, she agrees with you about thinking about the long term. And I guess true to you members of the audience, like what is your relationship like with your CEO at present if you're working in an organization? Are you seen as the cornerstone of the organization and someone that your CEO can rely on, and that you do have that foresight, but that you share it in a way that alerts your CEO to any upcoming issues and how they can be fixed before? I think I remember Laurie Rudiman saying like doing pre-mortems. She brought the concept of
Mhm.
pre-mortems, and that's like, understanding where you're going to fail before you start a project. But I think like even beforehand, you see things happening in the organization. How can you preempt that
Yeah.
through the use of pre-mortem? So I think our audience is definitely in agreement with you there, Janice. So thank you for sharing that. But let me ask you this: what are some of the challenges that you've encountered in your career whilst interacting with HR? Like, what have been those moments that have made you go like, seriously? That's my HR.
Well, first of all, let me start with saying, when I looked at this question, the challenge I encountered with interacting with HR, the majority of women I've interacted with in HR have been female.
Right.
And I think it's a female
Dominant
heavy,
profession.
dominant, that's what I'm
Yes.
looking for, dominant industry. So I've
Mm-hmm.
always looked to forge great relationships with those women, as a woman anyway,
Yeah.
irrespective of what. So I've never really had major challenges. I've always been able to get my point across. There probably been a couple of times when you go, things that make you go, but CNC
Right.
Music Factory, definitely
Right.
show my age again there. But it's been nothing major. And I also think from a CEO or a leadership perspective, I think I'm probably going to have a CEO bias. I do, but I think as a CEO, we also have a responsibility to make sure we've made our team clearly understand what
Mm-hmm.
is expected, where we're going with this. So I
Right.
think there's an onus on us as a leader to
Yeah.
make sure we share that vision and
Mm-hmm.
provide some clarity. And
Right.
likewise, I think from a HR perspective, there's an onus on them to actually take that on board and see how it fits in.
Mm-hmm. That's funny that you said that, because I've heard so many times, I've heard throughout my career, like my HR peers, and I've experienced it a couple times too, where you've asked the CEO, like, what is the vision? What is the strategy? And you extracting it from them is like pulling teeth, very old teeth from a donkey or old donkey. It's like really, really hard to get them to extract and understand it. And I think sometimes I've had situations where I've had a CEO who just didn't get it,
Yeah, yeah,
didn't
yeah.
get it and could not articulate it.
But let me tell you why. Let me tell you a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit why.
Tell me,
Depending on the
tell
depending on
us,
the depending on the CEO,
tell us
depending on the
all.
CEO. Let me tell you why. Because there's an assumption that once you become a leader, or hit the CEO realm or the C-suite or whatever it is, that you should know everything. Yeah. And that you don't need further development, because obviously that's how you got the job. If you didn't know the business, you didn't know what you were doing, you wouldn't have got the job. Now, at a hazard of guess, there's probably a few HR persons out there thinking, my boss didn't get the message, didn't get
Mm-hmm,
that memo, because they're not demonstrating that they know what they're doing. And
mm-hmm,
so technically, they get to where they are, and they should just be able to get on with the job. But nothing can be further from the truth, depending on the level of experience that CEO has or that leader has, because they're probably coming for a role where they were deemed to be a proficient leader in
mm-hmm.
that role. But in the C-suite, or when you move up that ladder, a whole different set of
Yeah.
competencies come into play. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's something you don't get this in the book. You don't hear about this at C's. You hear me talk about CEO school. You don't
Mm-hmm.
get this there. You know, you have to experience it. So they get tested by the decisions and the management situations they haven't encountered before. This whole pandemic situation is a huge one.
Uh-huh.
No one ever taught about how to handle a pandemic
It's
when they
true.
did their MBA. That never happened. You know,
No.
how to keep a business afloat when everything, the whole world's falling down around them.
Mm-hmm.
And they get exposed to new scenarios, unfamiliar scenarios, presenting at the board, spearheading takeovers, downsizing organizations. You know, so if you've never let go people, you've never reduced a business, it's, you know, and made people redundant or let people go, it's a whole, you know, you get attached to those people. Leaders get attached to those people, just like HR do, and it's a difficult thing. The fact it may have to utilize their emotional intelligence more
Mm.
if they have it.
If they
You know,
have it. But
if they have it.
It was in my head. I'm glad you said it. I'm glad it's you said, not me.
And not only that, not only are they balancing, you know, all this thing, this whole newness. They've got
Mm-hmm.
the board, the stakeholders, the employees, the team, their family, what's happening. So there can be a feeling of isolation. So, you know, so how do they navigate that? Where's the support for them? That, and I think any HR practitioner, and I'm not saying, you know, woe is me as a leader, but I think they need to be cognizant, especially when it's a new leader or it's a new environment to them, that
Mm-hmm.
all these things are happening for them. It doesn't happen in isolation. They're not just CEO here at this point. They've got all this ish going on around them, and they have to juggle that as well. So, yeah.
Well, now you've raised some very interesting things that made me remove the question because now I want to ask you something else that has nothing to do with what we slay here for. But like in terms of that relationship, then when you have a new CEO, what are
Yes.
some of the things that you would recommend HR professionals do to kind of get that new CEO, especially if like I've been there for years, this person is
Yeah.
now coming through the
Yeah.
door. What can I do to support my new CEO?
As I said, you play a pivotal supporting role. And I think people need to realize that they play a pivoting supporting role. And if you see your CEO needs development, if you see they need coaching, this is often the difficult thing because, you know, people are, oh,
Exactly.
coaching. You know, I'm a leader. I don't, yeah, you do
No.
need it. You do need it. You know, that's often when I get called, that's when I get called in. You know, that's what, you know, to help them navigate those challenges. It's confidential what we talk about because no one wants to be seen as weak or need development. But even the best player, sports, athletes need that support, need that coaching and guidance. So if you see that happening and you think it'd be a good fit for them, have that conversation.
Yeah.
But for you as the HR, you want to understand your CEO's hot buttons, you know, and we all have them. You want to understand, you know, where they're coming from, what's their perspective, what are they being faced with, all the
Yeah.
things I talk about. Do your research, ask, listen, ask the questions, ask what your CEO thinks about a particular topic. Get their perspective, you know, put yourself in their position a little bit and forget about your agenda right now. This isn't about you, unfortunately. It's not about you. It's about how do you support that leader to do the best job they can do. You are in a supporting role. The whole team is in a supporting role. And all the members of that leadership management team play a pivotal part in making sure that organization achieves what they need to, what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. I see the comments are going crazy. I was like looking left, I was looking right. I was like, where are these come? But I see the comments coming through. Wanda, thank you so much. Wanda makes a very valid point. HR is the people, the operations part is HR, is it's people operations. We are associated too much with the tactical and the ops, not the people and the culture. What are your thoughts on this, Janice?
So run that by me again. What was the question? Ah, here it is. The operations part is not HR, it's people operation. I think it's very difficult to divorce yourself from that, because people are part of the operations. Without the people, the operations doesn't happen. So I think you need to find that fine line, that balance as to how you support the tactical and the ops. How does it fit in? You don't have to go, be running the whole shebang, but you should be able to have that conversation with your team as to what is the HR impact? Where does it fit in? How can I support it? What do I see coming down the line? Well, what you're proposing from the people perspective. So I still think you're part of the operations, but you have to look at it through the people lens, as to what's being promoted as what's been promoted tactically.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I don't think you can divorce yourself from it.
I agree, because I think that when you talk about people and you talk about operations, as you said, operations don't happen without people. And I think it comes back to your point before about foresight and understanding your people. In order for us as HR to create a great people strategy, we have to understand the business of the business. So that's not just how our business makes and loses money, but how our business functions on a day-to-day basis. And what is needed in terms of the talent that is going to pass through our organization to achieve our goals as an organization, right?
I can't nod any more about that. I can't, because you need to be able to see the implications of any new initiatives on revenue streams. You need to be able to contribute to the competitive landscape, because then you making a people move in one particular organization, one particular direction that doesn't gel with what's coming on down the line. You're gonna have a total miscommunication and a misfit. Your role is to optimize. HR has to change their mindset. That's the big thing. Change their mindset.
Hold a second. Say that again.
HR has to change their mindset. If you want to be taken seriously, if you want to have that seat at the table, you have to change your mindset. You have to understand what your role is, not the textbook definition or whatever it is. What's your role in the organization as HR? So what I would advise, and I'm going to go to my soapbox here, I'm going to say, no, you're shit. I'm going to say, I've said ish, but no, you're shit. So I would say strategy first, HR function second. And that's a huge shift, because as we just saw, we were talking about the people and the operations, but you have to understand the organization's strategy, not just be that passive observer as to what's happening. You want to, as I said, see the implications and what that looks like, that what you're proposing. You want to optimize the organization, not just the process. Too often, again, we've put a people process in. But how does that optimize the operation? How does that work in? You have to operate, unfortunately, HR, at a higher altitude than some of those people around your table, to make sure that the different parts of the business, what's being proposed, all fits together, all does that, all links in. So you're going to have almost this 3D vision superpower to see, as you said about the talent, what talent's needed, what does it come on, what does it look like going down the line? And where you may have focused on a micro process, like you want to do an incentive plan or, get a talent development plan, I want more than that. I need you to have a macro vision. You want to be able to optimize the organization, not just the functional, the process, move to maximize the productivity of the organization as an integrated whole. And then my last thing I'm going to say on this, well, not last, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
You want to bring HR, the HR view to the boardroom. Now, I know it's difficult, and it's probably the toughest thing, because HR hasn't been taken as seriously as it should. But right now, God, people, HR, you are a hot topic. And if you don't take the opportunity to get your ass, excuse me, in that room where those decisions are happening, where that conversation is taking place, you need some work, because this is right now when people are really listening to you. They may not like what you got to hear, but no one ever does if it goes against what they're trying to say.
Exactly.
But, if HR had been in the room, some of the things that happened, like Amazon with the employee breaks and stuff like that, the Uber and the sexism scandal they had and all that kind of stuff, wouldn't have happened. And some of these discussions around vaccinations and stuff, these are hot things.
Oh, yes.
These are very, very
Oh,
hot
yes.
topics.
Mandatory vaccinations and all these things are very, very hot topics right now. I want to say like topics of point right now. And this is the perfect time for us as HR to flex our HR muscles and show what we are worth. And show why we deserve that seat at the table and be a part of those conversations. And not just be a part of it, be about it.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference in being a part and being about it, right?
Yeah. The leaders, it's new to them too. They don't really know their arse and their elbow. You know, I know this isn't censored, but you know what I mean? You know, so they don't know where to go. So they're looking for that guidance. This is new to them. And I think people forget that. Leaders do not have all the answers.
No.
That's why they have a team. And if they have any sense, the right sense, they will lean on that team and utilize that resource as much as possible.
And I think also to your point, HR doesn't have all the answers either.
Yeah.
Right? We're all in a state of we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we learn together, if we research together, if we grow together, Jolene is saying, Janice, you are my hero.
I can feel my beating heart.
But you see, this is what I'm saying. This is why this conversation needed to be had. And I think it's better to have this conversation with a CEO than it is to have it with an HR person. Because you recognize what you need from us. We already know who we are. We know what we want from you. And it's to understand how do we close that gap. I think a lot of times, I did a poll some months back where I asked people like on LinkedIn, what is your relationship like with your CEO? Is it great? You know, you guys gel together, you are aligned, you understand each other. Are you in a state where you are currently, you know, navigating that relationship? It's not as great as you'd like it to be. You get stuff done, but you stay out of each other's way. Or is the relationship such that you're like, I can't stand my CEO. I don't like to see him on a good piece of paper or her on a piece of paper. I just want to get the work done and go about my business. And a lot of people said their relationship was great. But then when I talk to CEOs about their relationship with HR, I get a completely different story. It's like when I ask HR professionals, how does your organization view you? What do they think of you as a HR professional? And they go, oh, my people love me. My people love me. I do great. I get all this great feedback and yada, yada, yada. But then when I start talking to your people can't stand you. Your people don't like you. Your people, you know, when I start to ask those questions, I get a completely different answer. So my point to that is, as HR professionals and as you as a CEO, it's important for me to really understand where you're coming from. How do I grasp that? How do I close that gap?
Absolutely.
And knowing not only that it's our relationship is fundamental. A lot of times as HR professionals, we get upset and bent out of shape when the CEO puts the CFO, prioritizes the CFO over the HR. But if you're not bringing the value, if you're not bringing the foresight, if you're not doing your, you know, putting the operations and the people together to create something that's really great in terms of your people strategy going forward, this is where you're going to continue to have the challenges, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to go to the comments. Wanda. Is it Wanda? Yes. So you have to look at both screens because over here it says LinkedIn user. Exactly. Bring the value. So Wanda is saying that what she's finding as a consultant in the C-suite is unaware of what they need. They view HR as mostly compliance, keeping us out of trouble, especially the small, mid-sized company. Lots room for opportunity. That's what we're talking about, right, Janice?
Definitely.
Yeah. And then she also says financial controller and HR are the two most important roles after the CEO. Those three positions form a tripod. Oh, I like that.
Yes.
Remove any one of these three, the organization is not balanced, effective. Absolutely. But I truly believe that HR fundamentally is the cornerstone of the organization. And whenever I have talks with leaders about recruiting, I always say hire your HR person first, because
Mm.
that's the person that's fundamentally going to guide you. Should know the people and will be able to help you to build a robust team if you're working
Mm.
with a recruiter. But you should know your CEO inside out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes
Sorry,
HR needs
sorry. Go ahead.
they need to have a little come to Jesus conversation with themselves. Some HR
Mm,
persons, it's probably time for a little introspection as to when they talk about their role and stuff like that. How do you as a HR person view your role? How do you view your role? If
yes.
you're coming from the fact that I just deal with people and that's it, then you're off to a sorry start, because people is just part of the organization. So you have to be really honest with yourself about your role. Are you clear on what's expected of you? And if you don't know, ask the question. Ask the question. If you're not sure what it is, you have to ask it. What does the
Yeah.
organization, the CEO expect of you? And then I would talk about credibility.
Hmm. Oh, yes.
How credible are you is a question.
Hmm. Yes.
Qualifications do not equal credibility. I'm
Credibility.
sorry.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you. Say that again. Please say that again.
qualifications qualifications do not equate to credibility.
At all.
You can be qualified up to the hilt and not deliver.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you not understand the business. You don't understand what makes things tick. You don't understand if you turn that lever, that happens. You need to understand that as much as the CEO does, as
Yes.
much as any other part of the business. And
Correct.
and and when you do something, do you deliver?
Hmm.
Have you built relationships with the other people in the team? Because again, you go into that room sometimes and you're going to propose something that's a little bit out on toward the scene. I've never done that before. But if you've built those strategic relationships and your team to back you up and to say, well, actually, boss, if you do this, X, Y, Z will happen, and we could do this, and that would deliver, and you're speaking my CEO language, you're talking to me in dollars and cents, because that's, I answer to maybe a higher power than you,
Yes.
stakeholders, the board, and stuff like that. You need to understand. You need to know my buttons and
Yes.
literally what turns me on as a
Exactly.
CEO, right?
Yes. Yes.
What
Yes.
what gets me excited?
Exactly.
What do you know about it?
And so it ties back down to the nuts and bolts of it all is building relationships with your key stakeholders.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you understand your key stakeholders as an HR professional? And you said something that I ask myself like constantly, but this morning I was actually watching a video. There are a couple psychologists that I follow on TikTok, and one of them was making a point about questions that you should ask yourself.
Yeah.
Am I adding value? And if I'm not adding value, like what does my company need? And being able
Yes.
to answer that and have that conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
What does the company need? What does my CEO need? Am I really giving the value that I need to give? And if your answer is no, then your next question should be, how do I close this gap? How do I connect this dot? And you brought up a very good point about the importance of having the competencies and skills to do that. And I consult with a company out of Rotterdam called the Academy to Innovate HR, and they actually teach HR professionals lots of different things, how to be an HR business partner, and they have lots of different courses. But one of the things they talk about is building your competency as a T-shaped HR professional. That is, knowing your business acumen,
Mm.
understanding the technology that you bring to the organization, and does it make sense? Are you helping the organization to create a great culture? And are you streamlining processes and policies in such a way that people feel happy to go through a process? No matter how uncomfortable it is, was the process easy for them to go through?
Yeah.
Have you streamlined it? And how competent are you at understanding not just the business and interpreting it, but around the legislation, whether it be from a governmental
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
to create policies that make sense for the organization? And a lot of times, and I've heard other HR professionals speak on this, Tracy Sponenberg talks about it all the time, where, understanding your place at your political place. Are you familiar with certain people in your country
Yeah.
who create legislation? Are you making those movements to make the necessary changes? Because sometimes it's bigger than us, and that's what we need to understand as HR
Mm,
professionals. It is bigger
mm,
than us. So, are
definitely.
you building those competencies as an HR professional? Can I call you a subject matter expert and say, hands down, if I have a problem with performance, Janice can answer my question. If I have a problem with a policy or some form of compliance, Jolene can answer me. And category, hands down, I can take her advice and run with it because I know
Mm,
she's got what it takes, and
mm.
I don't have to think twice about what Jolene advises me. That's the crux of it all. I'm sorry, Tamika. I'm so sorry that I miscalled your name before. Tamika has a question, or is it a question? How do you navigate the expectation that all staff must be well trained by HR, but the staff aren't being given the time to attend training sessions? Then, when issues arise in the operations, the default response is to make HR the scapegoat and say that staff aren't being trained, thereby rendering HR as ineffective. Oh, Janice, are you?
Okay. So I would have said, what was your plan? I would start with what was your plan, because if there's a challenge with, are you aware how much time is available for people to be trained? Can you train outside of normal training times? What's your plan? I'm not going to accept. I'm not beating down on people, but I'm not going to accept that we can't train people because we haven't got enough time and stuff like that. That's a problem. MacGyver it. How do we think differently? Who do I need to negotiate with to get to allow these people to have the time they need to do training? What conversation do I need to have with the people the team manager whose people aren't being trained, and the impact it'll have on their performance? Don't just talk about the team. Run it up the line. Do you know if your people aren't trained to this standard and XYZ happens, your backside's going to get cut? You take the monkey off your back, and help and look at all the ways you can get the support you need to run it. And depending, and then a position the people, I know it's challenging. Invariably, most leaders right now, we know, are male. HR, we've already said, a female. So the dynamic of women must be kind of in their corner type of thing, that kind of stuff, sometimes comes into play. But
Mm-hmm.
have the confidence to have the courage of your convictions to say, look, Mr. CEO, I'm going to say it's a Mr. because it wouldn't be a woman. No, I'm joking. But Mr. CEO, if this doesn't get done, this will be the impact on the organization. What I need from you is, have your plan. Be upfront. Be upfront and have that conversation. Don't wait for it to happen, roll like a steam train, because it's too late.
Yeah.
But I always start my plan. What's my plan? This is the challenge. I've been here before. They don't normally give me time to get the staff trained, but they want the staff trained. How do I mitigate the two? How do I think? How do I think like that and say, oh, instead of throwing things up in the air?
Hmm. Hmm. I see Gail chiming in as well and saying, could e-learning be used
Exactly.
so that people can upskill outside of hours? Could completing training
Exactly.
be
We
tied
have
to performance reviews? Make
think
persons accountable with
outside.
face consequences? Yes, Gail.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
Think outside the box.
Yes, definitely.
You
And
know?
um, that's where agility in HR comes in, because it really helps you to get to a stage where you experiment more,
Mm,
which
mm.
then means that you more ask for forgiveness than you ask for permission. But you get things done, right? You get things done in a more effective way. So yeah, I mean, I really want to touch this subject, but I can see, like, as I know, as always, the comments will keep coming. But I feel like this is really important to ask. So we're going through COVID for the last 18, 20 months. I
Yes.
saw a couple of reports recently where CEOs have said that yes, they recognize that HR has gone through a very difficult time. Yes, they recognize that their HR is probably feeling burned out, but they're saying it may not be sustainable. Like, will they always be this busy? I don't think they'll always be this busy. I don't think there'll be that much work for them coming out of COVID. So, like, what's the fuss about? What are your thoughts on that as a CEO in terms of what is the expectation? Where does this come from? Because clearly, this is telling me that a lot of senior leaders don't necessarily believe that their HR has value or that much value beyond COVID. Again, mindset, I think. But what is the
Yeah.
mindset here?
Well, I haven't seen the report. I'd like to see the report,
I will
but I
send it.
also think there could be, come look some of the things we were talking about. There could be a disconnect between what the CEO sees as busy work and meaningful work. There could be a disconnect, and kudos to all those HR persons that have stepped up and do extra hours. I'm not going to take anything away from that, because there has been an extreme demand in what's been needed. But from a CEO's role, they're looking, and like I said, I already talked about the demands they have to meet, all the people, the board, the stakeholders, the customers, so their focus is multifaceted. And then probably not seeing that, because as a function, HR has always been below the radar. It's always been below the radar. And as a result, their view can often be seen as solely people focused, because that's where you've positioned yourself as HR, because that's where it's safe. That's what that's what you've become comfortable with. But now you've been pushed, your backside has been pushed straight into the car headlights, the spotlights, and it's right on you. And they're thinking, would that person here all the time? you know you know HR, HR needs to become comfortable with the uncomfortable and switch up the game, and prove this is why I'm here. All the things we talked about, adding the value. What are you bringing? What do you do differently? How does it fit in with the operations? And I can, and as I said, I can appreciate that, for all this time, see HRs want to be heard, but because they were expected to manage only personnel transactions. But as I said, the time is now right for you to say, actually, I do more than that. This is what I deliver. This is what I bring to the bring to the party. And what the conversations I've been having with those enlightened CEOs, because I said, no, not everybody's quite there yet, is that they're showing signs of, of listening. But it's the mindset change that is required from HR to say, strategic, be more strategic when you're with your focus. Come with all the things we've talked about before. Not going to reinvent the wheel again, but all the things we spoke about. And I just think there's a disconnect between busy work and meaningful work.
Meaningful work.
Said, if you were there all the time, and all of a sudden we just kind of, what were you doing before?
Yeah. Good question. Very good question. Which leads to the next question. So then, what advice would you give to HR professionals? I said who are interacting with their CEO for the first time, but coming out of that point, like interacting with their CEOs who may be of this mindset as well, of busy versus meaningful.
Yeah. And we've kind of hit on this earlier in some of the stuff we're talking about. It's the strategy first, the HR function second. What are you bringing to the table? How do you impact? You need to talk CEO speak. And CEOs don't just speak people. They don't just speak people. If you want to get an idea across the table, so CEO and say, if we employ X amount of people, or for instance, so-and-so, there's a different approach. And when someone says, oh, we need to recruit 10 more people, and the CEO sitting there going, we need to recruit 10 more people, and all they think is it's going to cost me
money
on the payroll. But you saying we need to recruit 10 more people who are going to do X, Y, Z, which will deliver this and impact the bottom line by Y, is a whole different conversation. Now you've got my ears.
Yes.
So if I invest this in the payroll, I'm
Right.
going to get this back in my ROI.
Correct.
That's what I want to hear.
Exactly.
You know,
Because
and so,
previously this process was taking us X amount of time and
yes,
costing us X amount,
X,
versus
yes,
now
yeah,
we hire those people. It is going to take
yes,
us X amount of time,
yeah.
which is going to increase our ROI by X%.
I mean, we've all been in organizations, and I've seen it myself, where we need to change a process, lickety split, quick. And it's quick and dirty, and it's more than MacGyvered.
Quick and dirty is painful.
It's more than MacGyvered. But then it becomes part of the organization. But all the time it's clocking up all these additional costs.
Yeah.
And no one's had the nous to say, well, actually, if we do it differently this way, it may be some pain. We may need to redeploy people in different departments, or do this and restructure this. It's that pain. And sometimes HR thinking, oh, it's a bit painful, it's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But when the CEO then finds out, well, why didn't you tell me about this before? And I could have saved the money now. When the back is really against the wall to save costs, you could have done it before then. So be proactive, not reactive.
Not reactive. I cannot say that enough. I can't offer that advice enough. I feel like it's really important. But then there may come a point in time in your career, in our career, where we've been aligned with our CEO, and we've worked well together. Something's gone wrong, and now we're at a misalignment. We're not quite gelling.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that misalignment? How do we put that together?
I would have to take it back a few steps to understand where was the misalignment. And again, it's back to this introspection. When did it happen? What caused it? What part did I play? What part did the other individual play? It really is about doing the postmortem, not the pre-mortem. It's doing the postmortem as to why we got here. Mm-hmm. And having that uncomfortable conversation often with your CEO. Say, look, something's not quite right here. Things aren't working the way they used to work, and I'm not quite sure where the misalignment occurred. Can we sit down and have a talk about it?
Yeah.
They're they don't always bring it up. CEO may not always bring it up till it's like you're on the chopping block type of thing. But you want to preempt that. If you see things aren't quite can't go in the right way, just like you would if you're in a relationship, you'd have that conversation. Things aren't working out right now. It's not you, it's me, type of thing. So have that. Take that time to have that conversation and do the work. Put the work in,
and be okay with the feelings that come with.
Yes. It may not always be something you're gonna like. You're gonna like hearing, but if it's constructive, it's coming from the right place.
Exactly. And it could be both ways, because it could be some. I think it's like, what is the story that I'm telling myself?
Yeah.
And the story that I'm telling myself is there's a misalignment, and I feel that it's you.
Yes.
Here's why.
Yeah.
Where versus, what is the actual story here? Yeah. And understanding that, but being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to take our ego out of it on both ends of the spectrum.
Goes both ways.
Both ways. To having a purposeful and a meaningful conversation where we're actually holding space for each other, because we really want the business to succeed. And in order for that to happen, our relationship has to be a good relationship. Mm-hmm. So if something's off keel, we need to rebalance that, right?
Definitely.
This was a great conversation. I can't, you know what?
Bring it.
Every single time I go for an hour, and it never ever is enough, but it is. What are your final comments, recommendations when it comes to this HR CEO relationship, and how we can play our part to redefine it?
Well, take on board all the things we've just talked about, and know what you. Sometimes we can get dragged into the mire, and woe is me, and the CEO has gone off the rails again. But are you understanding why they're asking you to do the actions they do, take the actions that they've asked you to take? And if you don't understand, ask. Focus on controlling the controllables where you can, because sometimes things are just out of your hands. I've been in situations where I've had edicts from on high to reduce headcount. I haven't liked it, but I understand, even if I don't like it, what the rationale is behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And if something didn't go quite right, what will you plan to do differently next time?
Mm-hmm.
And keep the dialogue going. The one thing I was always very acute, one big thing here actually is that regular one-to-ones with your CEO. If that's
CEO.
if that's your next in line, regular one-to-ones your CEO, and recognize
What do
that
you call regular? Sorry. What do you call
I
regular?
would at least once a month, depending where you are, if not weekly, because you'd have your team management, your SMTs, your senior management team meetings once a week, and then once a month is your time. Now, remember, this is your time. It's not the CEO's time to tell you all about your business. It's actually your time when you have the CEO's ear. You need to control that dialogue as much as possible. Be prepared for that meeting. What are the points you want to get across? What are you trying to what are you trying what's your objective of having those points? That's your time. And the one thing I was always very cognizant of doing as well, I gather as a CEO, they're always busy. They're picking up their phone, they're looking at something, they're doing this, that, and the other. I used to make it a point of telling people not to disturb me when I was having these one-to-ones. And if I get distracted, I let the person I was having the one-to-one with say, look, bit of courtesy. It's our time. This can wait, type of thing. But
Yeah.
but I also think the CEO has to place as much onus, and it's hard for them sometimes. Place as much importance on that time of that individual. If that's the only time out of 30 days in a month, you're going to have 1 hour. Give them the courtesy of having having your unadulterated time. Shut down your laptop, turn away from the emails,
Yeah.
and have that face to face conversation in the individual. And for
Mm-hmm.
you in that seat, as I said, remember it's your time.
Yeah.
It's your time. You own it. You
Right.
dictate the direction of the conversation.
Yes. Absolutely. Great final closing words. Could not have said them better. Thank you so much for your time today, Janice. This was really a great conversation. I saw someone send me a message just now and said this was a really great conversation, that they have a call in 10 minutes with their CEO. So this
Janice said,
so this was a perfect timing for that conversation. I feel like this conversation is something that we constantly need to have, just to remind ourselves about who we are as HR, and what building our relationships with the CEO. A lot of times we take a lot of things on, but we don't really think about what's happening from the CEO end of it. But also, we don't take the time to invest in our
mm,
CEO. We
mm,
expect the CEO to invest in us, but then are we reciprocating, and is it balanced? And a lot of times,
definitely.
if you ask yourself that question, the answer might very well be no. Because the same way that we complain and might say, our CEO should have the answers, we should know what the strategy is. Why can't they articulate this? Why can't they do that? But at the end of the day, they very well may not know, or may,
Yeah.
because they're getting it from somewhere else, it may not be
Yes.
as clear. So we need to also take that moment that we're expecting them to take to understand our limitations, to understand theirs. So thank you for bringing that perspective. um, this was a very much needed conversation. I feel like we need to do a part two of this. Well, I'm not calling that. Next year is another year. Every single conversation we've had so far, everyone's gone, yep, we need to do a part two. I know it will come. So thank you so much, Janice.
You're welcome,
Listen,
Julie.
guys, this hour has gone super, super quick, but I always appreciate your time, your energy, your effort. You could be somewhere else at 12 p.m. on any given Wednesday, and you take the time to be here. And I so appreciate that. And I value your input and your comments as well, because as I said, we are magnifying HR voices. So this is a conversation for all of us. Next week is September already. Like, I can't even believe it. But next week, we're going to talk about why HR is not responsible for culture. And I'm going to have that conversation with Karen Weeks. This is going to be a great conversation as well. It's important for us to understand. I think a lot of times CEOs and others in the organization seem to think that culture is an HR thing, and that, oh, it just means planning events. But culture is so much more than that. And so Karen and I are going to have that conversation from an HR perspective. What does that mean for us as HR professionals? If you want to join the conversation, please send me a message. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Let me know what you want to talk about. If you want us to magnify your voice as an HR professional, send me a message. I'm so happy to have you be a part of the show. We are going to take a break in December, and then we're going to come back every other week. But as time gets closer, we will talk about that. Do you have your copy of Confessions of an HR Pro, Stories of Defeat and Triumph? If you do not have your copy as yet, why not? Go get one. It's on Amazon. And with that being said, I look forward to seeing you guys next week, same time, same channel, where we magnify another HR voice. Bye.